Welcome back, y'all, again. And now we are on chapter 8, the spirit world. And again, I have a little quote at the top, which states from Carl Gustav Jung, which states, "I shall not commit the fashionable stupidity of regarding everything I cannot explain as a fraud." So, chapter 8, the spirit world. Parking the materialist conclusion that death is the end of, and science's valiant effort at denying the supernatural, it's always possible there is a spirit world replete with disembodied metaphysical beings that intervene in our physical world in a supernatural way. It seems that some spirits are summoned into existence through occult practices, whereas others come by their own volition. It's also noted the term spirits is used very indiscriminately, as there seems to be a host of invisible but substantial beings in our midst. Ghost stories are universal, but for the purposes of example, we can consider Roger Moore's 007's experience. Thus, he was staying in a hotel circa 1960, and having gone to bed, he woke up suddenly, covered in perspiration. He then saw a mist come streaming through the windows across the bed to finally take form close beside him. Whilst frozen with fear, he nevertheless questioned, "What do you want?" Then, as suddenly and mysteriously as it had appeared, it disappeared. The following night, the strange incident recurred, but the third night, Moore noticed that a Bible was lying next to his bed that had been left open at Psalm 23, which states, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me," and so on. And that night, the mist did not appear. The following morning, a maid, who happened to be a Jehovah's Witness, asked Moore if he'd seen the ghost, and when he replied that he hadn't, she said, "I didn't think you would." She advised that she put the Bible by the bed. It seems the Holy Bible's presence had warded off whatever incorporeal entity had crept in. Charles Richet, French physiologist, notably coined the term ectoplasm in 1894 to describe the misty substance associated with the formation of ghosts. Ectoplasm can appear as either vapor, smoke, like in Moore's ghostly encounter, or like funky smelling mucus semen. Lovely. Richet notes this rubbery, milky substance emerges from mediums' bodies when they summon spirits. The spirit physically manifests through the yards of excrement. Ectoplasm can be extruded from orifices such as the mouth, ears, nose, and occasionally less convenient places. Lol. And apparently, people have ectoplasmic encounters with sex ghosts. Paracelsus states people may feel ghosts instinctively or physically like a cold wind or like a current of electricity passing through the body. He notes that those acquainted with modern spiritualism will know that usually at the beginning of a strong physical manifestation, a cold draft of air is felt, and sometimes a corpse-like odour pervades the air in the room where the seance is being held. He states that this is caused by the astral body of the dead. As mentioned, Paracelsus understands that we die when God takes his breath back. So our astral bodies are lying dormant for belligerent spirits to dress up in. Paracelsus believes our astral bodies will be resurrected, reanimated, to face our Maker on the last day. Apparently, poltergeists are the most common kind of ghost. In addition to making noises and moving objects, etc., they can possess people, causing them to speak in a strange dialect and levitate. There's also orbs, balls of light, which are allegedly harmless and linger about a house a person has died in. Orbs are also associated with crop circles, those interesting patterns that mysteriously appear in fields. Orbs are UFOs, unidentified flying objects. Hence, crop circles are also associated with aliens, which are also spirits. And besides seeing ghosts per se, people also report seeing angels and demons. Like a girl I befriended told me she regularly seen demons shadow people in her flat. Having opened herself up to the occult, she became a Christian. And there's no end of stories about angels. It's further contended they're spirits of the dead, like spiritualism, which has been around forever but made a comeback in the early 1800s, teaches that we can contact the dead, hence we don't really die. Like Jung and Co., contacted dead spirits through their seances, or they summoned spirits who presented themselves as such. It's like when Auntie Betty says "Ola" through the talking board, how do we know it's really her? Or like when I went to a spiritualist church with my friend a couple of months after his dad died, the medium claimed he was speaking to his dad, but was he? Or someone pretending to be him? Or perhaps the alleged medium was a charlatan winging his guesses? However, before we get to actively engaging with spirits, like say through a Ouija board, it seems pertinent to mention the Guggenheim's book, Hello from Heaven, which was published in 1995, because these after-death communications happen without a medium or any rituals or devices. After-death communications are spiritual experiences when someone is contacted directly and spontaneously by a deceased family member or friend. The Guggenheims estimate that about 20 to 40% of the US population has experienced this. Based upon their research, the Guggenheims highlight common types of after-death communications, like someone can be driving, then all of a sudden their loved one is in the passenger seat. There is, however, variation in their manifestations, as some can fully appear, looking and feeling fully lifelike and solid, whereas others partially appear. It's like the ghost that Young seen at his Bud's cottage in England was missing half her face. And people also report about disembodied hands, like the hairy hands legends of Postbridge, Dartmoor, specifically the B3212 route, which is deemed the most haunted road in the UK. It's reported that disembodied hands appear from nowhere, grab at the steering wheel of a moving car or the handlebars of a motorcycle, and then force a victim off the road. Disembodied hands, like those depicted in the Addams Family, are not uncommon. We also hear about this phenomenon in the Bible in Daniel 5. Indeed, it's where the idiom, the writing on the wall, came from. However, I digress. Besides so-called visual after-death communications, there's also hearing from our loved ones, which is known as auditory after-death communications, smelling them, olfactory after-death communications, feeling them or simply sensing them, sentient after-death communications. People also receive signs like butterflies or rainbows, or loved ones may indicate their presence by switching lamps on and off, activating radios, TVs, stereos, or other mechanical objects. This is otherwise known as poltergeist activity. It sounds lovely, but there's a fundamental insistence that the message one receives must be from someone they know. It must be our loved one, not someone else's loved one. Thus, an after-death communication is not meeting some other ghost or angel. It seems no good can come from visitations from strangers or hearing unknown voices, as alternatively, this would constitute psychosis. With regards to actively engaging with spirits, like through seances, Paracelsus cautions that while spirits do give correct answers, they do so to mislead, as they have no desire to speak the truth. He highlights that some spirits lie a great deal more than others, and they like to play games with us. Paracelsus states earthbound spirits often teach those they converse with to perform certain ceremonies, to speak certain words and names in which there is no meaning, and they do so for their own amusement. He confirms that earthbound spirits are seen in spiritual seances, rapping or tipping tables and producing physical manifestations, like they can cause the appearance and disappearance of objects, throw stones, etc. Before we get to poltergeist per se, it's also pertinent to note the Scole experiment because it was hailed for its evidence. The Scole experiment was a series of seances held in someone's cellar in Scole, a village in Norfolk, from 1993 to 1998. The psychic researchers were on a mission to investigate life after death and respectively reported all kinds of curious events. Like they received myriad gifts, apors, from kind disincarnates, including a silver thimble, 2 small silver lockets, a silver chain bracelet, a St. Christopher medallion, a decorated bowl, an ornate miniature spoon with a spiral metal handle, a gold medallion, and even old newspapers. They also reported other well-established phenomena, like temperature changes and paranormal breezes, smells, aromas, raps and taps, some soft, some loud, levitation of objects, musical instruments in the room were played. They heard their voices and engaged in two-way communication with them, and spirits materialized to varying degrees, like a disembodied hand appeared several times. There was also the manifestation of spectacular lights. Small luminous orbs darted around the room at great speeds, bouncing on and going through the table and sitters. These light spirits communicated with them, and when someone touched the light, they received a small electric shock. A UFO-shaped object also manifested. All this evidence is recorded. The Scole experiment's evidence further included photographs, images appearing on otherwise undeveloped and unexposed 35mm film. I think so. It was locked in a security box and no camera was used, as well as audio recordings and visual footage. When they developed their photos, they received whole lengths of films with symbols, puzzles, poems, and handwritten messages from the alleged dead, in multiple languages, including Sanskrit. The Bacci Center in Italy, or Bacci, which specializes in talking to dead spirits, also receives apors, mostly flowers, so that's nice. Marcello Bacci, one of the leading researchers in instrumental transcommunication, is principally dedicated to working with bereaved parents. He uses a direct radio voice method, which entails spirits communicating through loudspeakers of radios. The voices refer to listeners by name and answer questions put to them. Bacci has been in this field for more than 30 years and cooperates with scientists to demonstrate the credibility of his results. Respectively, one would think the appearance of apors would be ample evidence to suggest there's something funky going on. For a quintessential example of poltergeist activity, then, we can consider the Enfield case in England. in 1977. Thus, the Hodgson family, which consisted of a single mum and 4 kids, reported loud knocking sounds and flying objects, including chairs, beds, and chests of drawers. As it transpired, the poltergeist activity flared up after Janet and her sister were playing with the Ouija board. So initially, they contacted the police, but the mystified police, a policewoman seeing a chair move 4 feet, advised that the incidents weren't a police matter because they couldn't find anyone breaking the law. Lol. Then they contacted the press. Daily Mirror photographer Graham Morris said it was chaos. Things started flying around. People were screaming. Indeed, reporters from the press and photographers were hit with flying Lego bricks and marbles. Many disturbances were caught on camera, which included footage of Janet flying around the room. But moreover, Janet was also heard speaking in a male rough voice, claiming to be someone called Bill, who had died in the house. She said, or rather Bill did, "Just before I died, I went blind, and then I had an hemorrhage, and I fell asleep, and I died in the chair in the corner downstairs." This was later confirmed to be true. Bill's son advised that his mum popped out to the shops and his dad died in the interim, and his dad died exactly like that. He went blind and died in the chair in the living room. Bill's son, who heard Janet speaking, said she sounded exactly like his father. The eerie voice can still be heard on tapes today. Interestingly, when taken over by Bill, Janet was mischievous and her intelligence appeared too clever for Janet. It's like Young's cousin Helly, who Young described as not particularly bright, could be very intelligent when manifesting certain spirits. Furthermore, it seems to be some entity pretending to be Bill. As compared to the real Bill, this Bill was an a-hole. And whilst this Bill mostly called himself Bill, he also called himself other names. So this was all caught on camera, along with footage of doors opening and closing on their own. Janet was also filmed bending metal spoons in an iron bar with her hands. When taken over, she would shout and scream, have trance fits, was violent, and often banged her head off the wall. Janet advised that a priest's visit resulted in the quieting down of the incidents, but they didn't stop entirely. Like Janet, the boy who inspired William Blatley's novel and movie The Exorcist, which came out in 1973, was also farting about with a Ouija board before he got possessed. Blatley notably protected the boy's identity by stating it happened to Girl. Thus, the boy's aunt had taught him how to play with the Ouija board, and then a few weeks later she died. Shortly afterwards, unusual sounds began, which included frantic scratching and knocking under the floorboards. The family thought they might have mice and got pest control in, but none were found. The family even mused that perhaps the aunt was responsible. Events, however, took a sinister turn, like the boy's bed was shaken, with him on it, and on another occasion, the chair threw him off. The boy then began to have bizarre marks and scratches on his body. Paranormal branding took place about 30 times a day. He was described as having a very dark stare, yet with nothing behind the eyes. On one occasion, when the priest placed a crucifix on the boy's head, the boy slithered off the chair. Besides that joy, the boy, who was an otherwise very normal boy, would spit, scream profanities, get increasingly violent, and foam at the mouth. He also had phenomenal strength. Since psychiatry advised there was nothing wrong with the boy, they contacted a Catholic priest. Presumably, he would be diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder today, or schizophrenia, or at the very least, antisocial personality disorder. The boy was eventually delivered after a grueling exorcism that lasted weeks. It seems fairly easy to get possessed, but not so easy to get the unwanted lodgers out. Or we'll keep them, because they give us supernatural powers, superpowers. With possession, the person loses control of their thoughts, emotions, and behaviour. Classic symptoms of possession include spontaneous reactions like insanely laughing, bizarre and angry outbursts, convulsions, fits, fainting as if one is dying, fever, filthy uncontrollable swearing, noises, superhuman strength, violent slithering and writhing, drastic changes in vocal intonation, the sudden appearance of injuries like scratches and bite marks, but also letters and symbols or lesions, expelling foul substances, making strange animal sounds, and knowledge of languages not otherwise known, like Hebrew and Aramaic. It also seems ironic that psychiatry is in denial regarding what is unmistakably supernatural phenomena, and I'm not sure how they rationalise flying objects and furniture beyond Young's exteriorization conjecture. Astral projection, telepathy, and telekinesis have been proven time immemorial. However, while psychiatry is limited by medication, like to dull the voices and the person, which is invariably not a cure, there are spirit release experts. They either speak to the spirits directly if they have that ability, or the host goes into a trance and the therapist speaks to the spirit that way. These professionals attribute spirit attachment to myriad mental health problems and illnesses, including gender dysphoria. Hence, these dirty birdie spirits need to be cast out. It's estimated that 50 to 70% 5% of the population has spirit attachment, so that explains a lot. Spirit release experts tell us that, in short, the spirit's remit is to cause problems for people. Like, they might encourage someone to binge eat and at the same time induce guilt. There's disagreement about what these spirits are exactly, like demonic entities, nasty ghosts of dead people, or negative energy. It seems people like to sugarcoat entities with energy. Apparently, some people are more prone to spirit attachment than others, like people with mental illness or a drug addiction, or those who have experienced childhood abuse. Indeed, many people who have psychic gifts often report unhappy childhoods, including childhood sexual abuse. These experts also recognise an increase in spirit attachment in those who see ghosts and have spirit guides. It's biblically understood that we can open spiritual doors. We invite these critters in through our lifestyles, like sexual perversions and occult practices. We can also inherit demons. Excuse me. So, the moral of the story is it's best to give Ouija boards a wide berth. But we're intrigued by the supernatural, hence the sheeple go to psychics and clairvoyants. They pay to get duped by deceptive knowledge which comes from demons. Demons watch us constantly, hence they're able to provide true information. This evidence is that they're real, and it reels the sheeple in. Demons can tell people what they want to hear, which keeps them plugged in. Indeed, the sheeple want more. It's addictive, but demons are not our friends, and going to psychics and mediums opens spiritual doors. But the sheeple are thirsty for magic. Indeed, Wicca is the fastest growing religion in the UK. And contrary to the naive assumption that Hogwarts is hogwash, witchcraft is very real. Respectively, J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter books are not just harmless fun, as they contain over 60 practices forbidden in the Bible, like divination, sorcery, interpreting omens, witchcraft, consulting the dead, acting as medium, spiritist, spellcasting. It's likened to Crowley's Satanism, but it's presented as fiction. It's said it's unbelievably deceptive, as the occult is hidden in plain sight, lest we forget that it's targeted at kids. The New Age religion, which includes over 1,000 practices, has also been big business since the wayward 60s. And whilst it might seem like a comforting idea to talk to dead loved ones, it's not if they're imposters. Or it might seem like fun to astral project, but it's not if we return to our body and discover that we've got some unwanted company. Or it might seem like a good idea to visualise a happy place, but it's not so happy when intruders appear. And it might seem like a good idea to get Reiki, spiritually guided healing, but it's not if we're imparted with spirits. Messing about with a cult is at our peril. Father God put the dimensional wall in place and shut down our spirit bodies for a reason. But as Paracelsus highlights, the spirits want us to engage with them. We're their raison d'etre. They want us to ingest some DMT and break on through the other side, their side, as it would appear Mr. Mojo Rising, Jim Morrison, did. Dr. Rebecca Brown states that contrary to God's will, Satan's goal is to teach humans to gain conscious control of our spiritual bodies. She asserts that open communication with the spirit world is the goal of all Eastern religions and Satanism. Hence, the sheeple now go to yoga and have Buddha statues in the garden. And they endorse Crowley's teaching, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Wonderful. The world is being primed for a New World Order, which is couched in a New World religion, and the people indoctrinating us, the elite who pull the strings, are Satanists, aka demon-possessed freaks. They're Luciferian witches who offer their gods sacrifices, just like they've done since the beginning. Thus, before we finish here, it seems pertinent to mention Hitler's occult practices, because it's understood that his Third Reich crossed the pond after World War II and it became the Fourth Reich. He was instrumental to the prevailing agenda in so many ways, not least by ensuring the State of Israel. It's also understood that Hitler didn't top himself in a bunker in Berlin in 1945, as CIA files revealed they were looking for him in South America in 1955. At the same time as Hitler and his buds were doing a shoot to South America and Antarctica, it's recalled that Project Paperclip covertly snaffled thousands of Nazi SS scientists and engineers into the US. Thus, Hitler was embroiled with the occult. As mentioned, he believed in Aryan supermen and propagated that Germans were their descendants. He endorsed Helena Blavatsky's theosophical Luciferian teachings. He was in a secret society called the Theo Society, whose inner circle was the Vril Society. The Vril Society consisted of mediums who contacted and channeled aliens, and apparently they were given designs for UFOs, not long after the flying saucer era dawned. It's also widely believed that Hitler was possessed. He was renowned for going into a mediumistic trance with glassy eyes, and he would be scared at night. David Icke, in 2007, concedes Hitler's behaviour was extremely indicative of demonic possession, including his strange epileptic-like fits. Besides the convulsions, he apparently suffered from terrible nightmares, and he would wake up in terror, screaming about entities that were invisible to all but himself. Those close to Hitler reported that he would call for help and appear to be half paralysed. He would gasp to the point of suffocation, and often when fully conscious, he would point to apparently empty space and scream, "He is here, there, in the corner." So, who's he? The devil himself, or maybe one of those tall, scaly, red and black weirdos. Okay, so that's chapter 8 finished. So we'll stop here and we'll go on to chapter 9.